Welcome, class, to FMS Initialization. So we've gotten to where we know kind of what the buttons and switches and knobs do with the FMS. Now we're going to start FMS Initialization, and we need to go ahead and go to our Canvas for this week. Go to the Canvas module, pull up the FMS Initialization instructions, and you'll see another document in there that we'll be referring to, and it's going to be the flight documents. The flight documents are going to look a little bit like this. It's going to be a 2-page. It's going to have various pieces of information on it. Let's just, while we've got it up here, take a look at what we are discussing. The flight documents are going to have this information on it. This is an abbreviated dispatch release. What is a dispatch release? Well, it's the document that we as pilots agree to by signing it to fly the aircraft based on a plan that has been developed by the company. When I say a plan, we're talking about a flight route plan that a dispatcher for the company has developed, which will allow us to effectively and safely fly this airplane from one point to another point. The dispatch release normally contains a lot of information. They're usually anywhere between 8 to 12, sometimes longer, sometimes more pages. In the case of what we're doing today for this exercise, I've abbreviated the dispatch release to include primarily only the heading, but there's enough information there for us to at least fly our Aerosim around. So in this case, the heading of the dispatch release says the flight number is 123, going from Salina to Denver. The release in this case was developed at 1630Z. Sometimes these releases are developed and put together an hour, 2 hours, 3 and 4 hours before the flight is even scheduled to depart. The release will have a lot of information on it, as I said. It's going to have your routing on it. It's going to have the weather information you need. It's going to have information, possibly what runways are being used or planned to be used at the different airports you're flying in and out of. It'll have your fuel burn. It'll have everything you need to know in some format or another. Those formats change depending on which company you're flying for. Doesn't really matter, but the concept of having a release remains the same. It's a requirement. You cannot take off without a release. In this case today, our dispatcher has filed this route with ATC. A filed route is not a clearance. It is a plan. This whole release is a plan. We're just trying to fly in accordance with the plan, but ATC can modify our plan quite a bit depending on what the traffic situation is that they're having to deal with, what the weather situation is. Things pop up that just have to be handled, and you cannot always stick to your plan, but we do the best we can. The next thing that you'll have to understand about this release is that we have an ATIS that we have to get. And on this ATIS, we will go ahead and try to figure out when the best time to get our ATIS is. And ATISs are released approximately 53 minutes past the hour. So the most current ATIS is probably going to be somewhere around 54 minutes past the hour. That'll give us the most current information. If we're waiting till 53 minutes past the hour to get the most current ATIS, but we only end up with 10 minutes prior to push, we're probably going to want to use the earlier ATIS to get the aircraft ready to go. So in this case, we're at Salina, where we normally get an ATIS by calling up ground control. Today, we're going to pretend that Salina is a really big airport and they have they are ACARS capable. So ACARS is our communication system that we have on our jet aircraft that allows us to basically text message with the company and text message in some cases with ATC. In this case, we're going to text message with ATC and call for our ETHOS at the airport we're departing, and we're going to call for the ETHOS at the airport we're going to be arriving. In this case, we're departing Salina. It looks like they're planning on using runway 17. We're going to arrive at Denver, and it looks like they're going to use, I don't know, 17 left or 17 right. I think they're going to end up using 17 left. I've been there before from this direction. I think that's what their procedure is. 30 minutes and no sooner than 30 minutes prior to push, we will be able to obtain our clearance. We can get our clearance today using our ACARS system, and we will get our clearance, calling it a pre-departure clearance or a PDC. As I said, we cannot get this PDC any earlier than 30 minutes prior to push. So at 30 minutes prior to push or 29 minutes, 28 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and instruct my ACARS to call for the PDC, and ATC will automatically send me the clearance when it's available, approximately 30 minutes prior to push. And in this case, the clearance happens to say, Midway 123, you are cleared from Salina to Denver as filed. Only when I see this as filed do I know for sure that that is my filed route. They could have sent me some other revised routing, and I would be expected to fly the revised routing. The rest of the clearance says maintain 4,000 feet, expect flight level in 330, 10 minutes after departure, contact departure on 124.4 and squawk 4431. I have my clearance 30 minutes prior to push. The rest of the information I'm looking at, I would not get until later on in the flight or later on during my pre-flight. And about 2 to 5 minutes before I push, the gate agent is going to bring me down a final load sheet after the aircraft is loaded with passengers. There's my passenger count. There's my cargo weight. There's my fuel weight. And I have my zero fuel weight, which is already known. But adding these up will give me my total gross weight that the FMS will populate for me. I can compare this weight against the weight that the FMS has calculated for me. Once I know this weight has been verified, I can then get my flip cards out and start plugging in my V-speeds into my PFD. And in this case, since we don't have flip cards available to you, I'm just giving you the V-speeds on this document. But this is simulator world, and that's how it works. So that's what this is the domestic release. You'll be getting an ETHOS, and you will be getting a clearance, and you will be getting a load sheet, and you will devise what your base speeds are at that point. So now let's get ready to go ahead and initialize this aircraft or initialize the FMS. But prior to doing this, what we would have done is we would have gotten off the crew van, walked through the terminal, went through security, walked up to the gate agent. The gate agent is going to print us off our dispatch release. She's going to hand a copy to the first officer. She's probably going to hand a copy to the captain. The captain's going to walk off down to Starbucks get his coffee, probably won't show up to the aircraft until about, say, 30 minutes prior to push. The first officer is responsible for getting the aircraft ready for push for the most part, getting the information loaded into the FMS, and getting everything set up so that they can leave on time. So the first officer leaves the gate agent, walks out onto the ramp or down the jetway, takes a look at the nose number, verifies that the nose number matches what the nose number is on the release. We're just going to pretend that it does. Going to walk into the cockpit, look around, make sure everything is correct, make sure that we have our maintenance logbook, make sure that the circuit breakers are all in, and verify that we're actually on the correct airplane by looking at the aircraft number that's probably placarded somewhere up on the forward panel. When we're convinced we're on the right aircraft and we've completed a safety check, then we will turn the master battery switch on, power up the APU. Once we get power onto the aircraft, electrical power onto the aircraft, our panels will start to show us display information, and we are ready to go and initialize the FMS. We do the initialization of the FMS through our MCDU over here. And that's the first thing we do with the FMS. So we have our FMS initialization instructions brought up. We've already talked about the parts of the MCDU on a previous video, so I'm not going to repeat that. We'll just go right into it and get going with step one of the initialization. Step one says, press the index key. So we're going to press the index key. Well, let's see where the index key is. I see an index key right here. I'm going to press it. And that takes us to the status page at L1. This is the index page. We have status page here, and we're going to select status page first. We're going to now verify information on page 1 of 2 on the status pages. The most important thing I'm interested in is to verify that the database for the FMS is current. And I'll tell you right now, your FMS in your iPad Aerosim Free Play is 10 years out of date. Something we'll just pretend is in date, is current, but let's pretend that the date is not current. Let's say it's 1 or 2 days out of date. If it's 1 or 2 days out of date, you would go to the next line, the L3 line, and you would see that the next database that's been programmed in is current. So we need to replace the old database with the new database. So we'll click on L3, drop that new database into the scratch pad, then we will take and move the scratch pad information up to L2. That changes our date. Now we are current and legally operating within the dates of the FMS. I would come down and I'd look at the universal time, verify that it's the correct time, and the correct time on the clocks throughout the flight deck match this. And then I'm going to look and see if the date is today's date. And for argument's sake, we're going to say it does. I'm on page 1 of 2, so let's go to the next page. I go to the next page button. And now I'm on page 2 of 2. Yes, I am indeed on a Canadian RJ. This happens to be an RJ 700. The max takeoff weight is 72,750 pounds. These are the engines, and I am good to go back to the previous page. I go back to the previous page. That puts me back onto the index page, and I go to step 2. Step 2 says, press the index key and select the pause init at L2. Pause init simply means position initialization. So I'm going to select that, takes me to the position initialization or pause init page, as we call it. I verify that I'm at Salina, Kansas. I take note of in L1 that what the lat longs are. I verify that they are something close to what the Salina airport says. That's not going to be exact unless we have the aircraft parked exactly at this location. It's probably not. It's parked at some gates. So therefore, they aren't going to match exactly, but they're going to be close. So now I need to set my position, tell the FMS exactly where we're at. The best way to tell the FMS exactly where we're at is to go to the next page, take a look at my FMS position, verify the lat longs match what was on the previous page. Then I come down here and I take a look at my GPS 1 position, verify that it matches, it does. Then I take a look at my GPS 2 position, verify that it matches the other 2 positions, and it does. So I'm good. I think I'll just take the GPS 1 position, put it into the scratch pad, go back to the previous page, take what's in the scratch pad, and set the position by entering the scratch pad information into R5. And there it is. Now I'm done with the pause init page. Go back. Now there's 2 places I can go back to index. I can do it either down here on this button, or I can do it right here when I'm prompted that way. Doesn't matter. It's going to take you to the same page. Just doesn't matter. So step 1 is complete. Step 2 is complete. Now I'm going to go to step 3, VOR control, which is on L3. When I go back to my init or my index page, I'm prompted here, I'll take that one. VOR control, I'm going to click that. I'm going to verify that VOR and DME usage is enabled at L5, and it is. If it was not, it would look like that. I need to make it look like that. I can go back to index, and I'm moving on to GPS control, which is step 4. I'm going to click on that. I'm going to verify that the GPS 1 and GPS 2 are both enabled. If they were not, it would look something like that. I would want to click it to make sure it looks like that. When I'm done with that, I would go back to the index page, and I would drop down to FMS control and verify that mag is in green and sync is in green, and I'm good to go there. Go back to the index. Now I know that I've completed all 4 of these index pages, starting with status all the way through FMS control. I do not need to do anything on the right-hand side of the index page. I'll use some of this information later on in the flight. The next button I'm going to go to will be the radio button. So let's take a look at what the instructions say from here on out. Step 6, select radio. So I drop down from the index page down to the radio page, and I see that I'm on the radio tuning layout. I have a couple things here to look at. This side is COM1, NAV1. COM1 is on top. NAV1 is down below. Likewise, COM2 is over here, and NAV2 is over here on the left-hand side. What I need to do on this page is one thing. Select nav1 and nav2 into the auto positions. So I'll do that. And auto. Now I've set up nav1 and auto so that as I fly across the country, the navs will automatically tune to the nearest nav aid, and that will cross-reference with the GPS, making sure that the GPS is providing us with accurate information. I'm done with the radio tuning page. I go to step 7 and I select MFD menu. MFD menu is this button here. And now I've selected it and I'm on the left display menu, map display. What does the MFD do? I call it the main display unit. It can also be called the map display unit. And that's what they're calling it here, is the map display unit. That's fine. We'll use map display unit for today. And it says that I'm looking at the left display because I'm on the left display menu. If you are the flying pilot, and today the flying pilot happens to be flying on the left side of the aircraft, you would select the left display to read in VNAV. Then you would verify that you were selected in speed and altitude, which if you'll notice that my menu will change slightly, it did not there. But to illustrate how this changes your MFD, take a look what happens when I select airports. So the lineup pulls up. And if I wanted to select intersections, I could pull those up. I could select high nav aids. I could do waypoints. But if I do all of these, my screen's going to get pretty crowded and I'm not going to be able to really see what's going on. So I'm not going to use those. I'm just going to use speed and altitude. I'm on page 1 of 2. So I'm going to go to the next page, verify that rings to altitude has been selected. Then I'm going to go ahead and set up the left display unit on the first officer side. I'm just a nice guy. So I'm going to change sides. Now it says I'm on the right display menu, map display, and I'll set them up. And if they're the non-flying pilot today, I would set them to the on position, verify that speed and altitude have been selected, go to the next page, verify that rings to altitude is selected, then I would switch back to the captain's display since this is the captain's MCDU. I have completed the task for this button. I then move to the performance button, or commonly referred to as the perf button. Go to the perf menu, verify that advisory nav is enabled, go up to fuel management, go catty corner to fuel management, and verify that fuel management is in the performance mode of predictive. If it's like that, I need to change it to predictive. I'm done with this page. I have 2 ways to go back to my perf menu. It's prompting me here, or I can select the performance perf button down here. Doesn't matter. I'll use the L or the R6 button, takes me back to that page. Now, here's what I want you to understand. There's another page that you need to be very familiar with, and it's the perf init page located at L3 while you are on the perf menu page. We'll click on that just to see what it is, and voila, it shows you the loading schedule as to how the aircraft will be loaded. When you get your load sheet 2 to 3 minutes prior to push, this is where you're going to enter the information. You're also going to enter your predicted cruising altitude up here. So if your clearance was flight level 300, you put 300 in up here. Actually, you put FL 300. But we don't have this information yet because we're just at the very early stages of setting up the aircraft. Just be aware of where this page is for later reference. I'm done with the performance perf menu page. I'm going to hopscotch over the legs page. I'm going to go to the flight plan page. And there's some information I know because I have the release in my hand. It says we are going from Salina to Denver and our flight number is 123. So I'm going to go ahead and put that information in while I'm here. KSLN into the origin. You'll notice that my distance says 0 because I have not put in a destination. So I'm going to put in a destination, KDEN, into my scratch pad, place it up here, and now I have a distance as the crow flies of 332 miles. That is probably not the distance I'm actually going to fly. It's probably going to be longer because my route will not be direct from Salina to Denver. If it was, I've got a really good controller helping me out. The other piece of information I still have that I can put in is my flight number, 123, and I can put it right down here at R5. Now, what the computer is asking me to do is execute the flight plan modification that I just made. Because I'm on the flight plan page, it's saying, do you want to execute this? Are you comfortable with it? Is it what you want the FMS to capture? Well, if the captain was here, I'd say, hey, Captain, do you like this? And he or she is probably going to say, yeah, I love it. Execute it. So I'm going to come over here to the execute button and I'm going to push on it. And now the FMS has received the information from the MCDU. Once I execute it, I can exit the aircraft and go do the walk around, and the initialization has been completed. So when I come back, we'll come back into the aircraft and I'll continue setting up the flight. So for a quick review, let's talk about how we did the initialization, the easiest way to remember it. I started at the index page, I went to the Baro page, I went to the MFD menu button, I went to the performance or the perf button, and then I hopscotched up to the flight plan page. So it's kind of like an odd shaped U. And we skipped the legs button, jumping right over it to the flight plan page. Now, since we've done this multiple times now and you're very good at it and you do not have to keep repeating it to have the instruction sheet memorized, you've already done it now, I would suggest that you save this scenario in your iPad. How do we save the scenario? We go to Snap. Your button is over here somewhere, but I'm going to snap this. I'm going to say, save my snapshot. Click Save. You're going to get something like this. It's going to look a little different, but you're going to name this. And I've already named it because I've done it before. So let's see where my snap, I'm going to save it as SLN Initialization. Drop it in there, save it as that. It's asking me if I want to overwrite my earlier one. I'm going to say yes. You probably are not going to have to replace anything if it's your first time. So now, the next time we sit down and talk about the next steps of getting this aircraft off the ground, you'll be able to go to that snap. We'll pick up exactly where we left off and continue with our training. So have a great day. I'll see you at the next video. Keep the dirty side down and the shiny side up.